Just me one more time. You're in mute, Geraldine.
Hello, everyone. My name is Geraldine, and I'll be your host for tonight's session. Thank you all for joining us as we're about to engage in the conversation relating to domestic violence. In particular, we're going to focus on while it is not a good thing to ask a person, why did they stay? In 2020, city police statistic indicated that there was 8,087 police reported domestic violence incidents in Edmonton. This was between the time period of January 1st and November 15. The violence ranged from assaults, family dispute, breach of court orders, and break and entry. Our speaker today is Harriet Tinka. She motivates abused women with her theme of "You are not your wounds." It's a kintsugi, Japanese concept of putting broken pottery pieces back together with gold, embracing flaws and imperfection to create strength. Her journey flows from being in a domestic violence relationship, from being kidnapped, stabbed, left for death, to being now a successful entrepreneur. Harriet is a four-time best-selling author. She's a distinguished Toastmaster, a board member of four organizations, an entrepreneur, an inspirational life coach, a blogger, football official, ultra-marathon runner, and a philanthropist. She only needs 4 hours of sleep. She describes her life as coming from tragic to magic. Today, Harriet will share with you the 4 stages of domestic violence. Please help me in welcoming Harriet Tinka.
Thank you, Geraldine, for the great introduction. I want to thank everybody here for coming and spending the time to listen to me speak to you today. Now, imagine walking down the street. All of a sudden, somebody comes from nowhere, a stranger, and they start to hit you and punch you. What would you do? Well, I think most people would be quick to say that they would go to the police and report the individual so that they can go to jail for a long, long time. Now let's change this. And this individual happened to be somebody that loves you, somebody who takes care of you, but yet this person is hitting you. You would not want to go to the police because you know if you do, you'd lose control. You'd not be able to pay for your expenses. You may not even be able to look after your children. This individual is somebody who loves you. This is the life of a domestic violence survivor. What happens is most people will see that and they'll say, why didn't you just leave? A question like that is basically blaming the abused person. It is a question that you should never ask somebody who has been in a domestic violence situation. Now, I had a secret. I was 21 years old and I looked at myself in the mirror and saw bloodshot eyes, an age shadow looking back. I looked so tired. The sadness and the daily tears weighed down my eyelids. I did not recognize myself. I was broken. My best friend, who called himself my boyfriend, Martin, was threatening my life. He was so exhausting that I just wanted to die. Today, I'm going to share with you a story about obsessive love. In Greek mythology, it's called mania. And what mania is, it's a psychological trap disguised as love. And I'm going to share with you 4 steps in domestic violence. And by the time I'm done, you will know you should never ask a woman or anybody who's been a domestic violence victim, why didn't you just leave? According to the national statistics of domestic violence, the age affected the most with an intimate partner by violence is from the ages of 18 to 24. Now, my story may be your story. If you knew me, you'd say, you don't look like a domestic violence survivor. Well, the perception of a domestic violence survivor is somebody who has a low self-esteem, maybe has no confidence at all. I was the opposite. I was an international model. I had a lot of confidence. I was walking the runway, showing off the latest fashion. And I was also working with young girls with their self-esteem. But yet, I was a victim. How does that happen? Well, domestic violence is so confusing. It can affect anybody. It can be any race, it can be any gender, it can be man to woman, woman to man to man, woman to woman. It does not discriminate. Now, step one in domestic violence is they make you feel so beautiful. They make you feel like royalty. They treat you well. I was your typical domestic violence victim. I was young, I was naive. I didn't even know the signs of a domestic violence situation. I had just retired from the modeling career and I decided to go to university. While at the university, I met another university student. Oh, he was a wonderful person. He was stocky and handsome, and his smile brightened the room. He treated me so well. I got to know him, and he idolized me. He liked everything about me. Now, I grew up in a happy family. My parents gave us everything we needed. I went to a private school, and my parents immigrated from Kenya to Canada just to give us educational opportunities. But I also went through that awkward stage where you have insecurities, you don't feel you're good enough. I went through that. But overall, I was a happy kid and I had lots of friends. Now, Martin was different. He was an only child. He was jealous. He was always angry. But I knew I was the only person that would really understand him. So I got to know him and he would treat me so well. And this is what abusers do. They make you feel like you are the dominant person in the relationship. And he did just that for me. And he was an artist and he wrote a song for me talking about how much he loved me. To me, we were just friends. But to him, I was his girlfriend. And he did not want me to say any different. So I let him believe that I was his girlfriend. I had a secret that nobody knew. Step number 2, they try to isolate you from your family. No matter what you do, they will tell you they are the only ones who will love you. Martin started doing that. I was not allowed to go anywhere without telling him. He would tell me anything that I wanted to hear. He would tell me how I should dress, who I should see, and he started getting jealous of all my friends, especially the male friends. Whenever I went anywhere, I would have to tell him. I remember one time I went off somewhere and I did not tell him. He was so angry. The good times were great, but the bad times with him, he would strip me my self-worth and make me feel like I was insignificant. It made me feel so depressed. I really wanted to tell somebody, but I couldn't. I had a secret and nobody knew. Now, step number 3. In this step number 3 is they test you to see how you react with the physical and verbal abuse. They want to see how you're going to react. Well, the very first time that Martin abused me physically was one particular afternoon. I just finished having a meeting with my professor. I was excited. I was like, yes, I know what I'm going to be doing. I'm excited. I walked up to him and I told him about it. And he looked at me and he slapped me. He said, how dare you come here late and excitable? Don't you know you were supposed to meet me at a certain time? I was in shock. But later on, he apologized. I accepted, but I blamed myself. Had I not been late, he would not have hit me. So it was really my fault. The fact that he got angry was my fault. And this is what abused women or men go through. When you're being abused, you take every excuse to make the abuser feel better. It's all about him. It's not about you. Now, what's really interesting and shocking is, according to the national statistic of domestic violence, 60% of the people know somebody who's been physically abused. What's even more shocking, every 20 minutes, somebody out there is being abused. So if you put it in perspective, and I think my math is correct, 60, if we're here for 1 hour, 60 times 1 hour and 20, that means about 1,200 people will have been abused by the time this meeting is over. And that is shocking. But yet people ask, why didn't you leave them? Why would you stay? But that statistic is so high. The very last step to domestic violence is just kill her. The thing about domestic violence is not all about having the black eye, having anger. It's about control. The abuser wants to control the other person because they know if they're there, they can control them. But when they leave, they have nobody to control. So this is the most dangerous stage in domestic violence. And again, according to the same statistic, the national, as you can tell, this is my resource, the National Statistic to Domestic Violence fact sheet indicated that 70% of the people who leave an abuse relationship end up being murdered. So you see, this is the most dangerous stage in domestic violence. Somebody once asked me, what is it like to be in a domestic violence situation? Why would you not leave? This is what it feels like. Just imagine yourself in an ocean and you see a shark, but you can see the fins. You feel there's danger there, but at least you can see the fins. But once the shark goes down, you can't see anything. So this is the thing, when you leave an abusive relationship, you can't see anything. But when you're there, you know where your abuser is. But when you leave, you do not know when he's going to kill you. And I keep saying he because most of the most abused people are usually women. There is men, but in this particular presentation, I will generalize and just say he, just for the sake of that. Most of the abused people will be women. So that's why this is the most dangerous stage in domestic violence. And yet people ask, why would you not leave? Because once you leave, the chances of you being killed magnifies. I know that some of you may know somebody out there who's been abused. Maybe you may be one of them. Maybe you've been through this. But my message to anybody out there who's been abused is, you are still lovable. You are not your wounds. If you know anybody who's been abused, this is the message you want to share with them. Now, the question is, why would people ask that question on abused women? The better question to me would be, why not ask, how can we help her? That's a better question. Or perhaps ask the abuser, what can we do to help him so he's not abusing the woman? There's much better questions to ask. Instead of asking that question, that is one of the most very victimizing question you can ask. Now, today I'll summarize what I shared with you today. Number one, there's 4 steps to the domestic violence. One is you are treated like gold by the abuser. They treat you like you are the most important person in the world. The second thing is they isolate you from all your friends so that they can make you feel like they're the only ones in the world who will take care of you, and you begin to believe it. The third thing is they'll test it. They'll test you to see how you're going to react when they're abusing you. And this is also a really dangerous stage because you could get hurt. The person could hurt you, they could murder you. But the very last one is the most dangerous of all. And that is when you leave, you never know. So stage 4 is kill her. She leaves, I'm going to kill her. Get nothing to lose, because domestic violence at the end of the day is about control. And that's what the abusers do. If you leave, they have nobody to abuse. So why not find you? And in most cases, they'll hurt your family before they hurt you. So that way you do not even want to leave. So my biggest message today is do not, no matter what, ever ask somebody who's a domestic violence survivor or victim, why didn't you leave? The better question is ask them, how can we help you? Or if it's a survivor, ask them, how did you leave? That's more of an empowering question. So I want to thank you today for listening to me. And right now, I am open to any questions that you may have. Feel free to ask any questions.
And if you feel more comfortable putting the questions in the chat and have me read them out, I will accommodate that also. Go ahead, Nur. Go ahead and unmute Nur.
Thank you, Harriet, for sharing this really important issue and for shedding light on how to really talk about, this very difficult situation. And I see your strength, and I want to ask you, how did you leave?
It was difficult for me because in the very last stage, which is the last stage, which is basically just kill her, he had nothing to lose. So for me, one of the things that happened to me, I left and I went away and I came back to my apartment and he kidnapped me, he stabbed me and left me for dead. So I was in survival mode. I didn't actually leave. I was forced to leave. And I tried many times to leave, but I couldn't. He would threaten me. He would say, if you leave, I'm going to kill your family. You leave, I know where your parents live. And he would tell me the address because he knew it, even though it was in 3 hours away. He told me, this is the address. I know when your mom comes home. I know when your dad comes home. So you leave, they're dead. So you cannot leave when you're being threatened like that. You have to stay. You have to save your family. So by default, I had to stay. And the only way I left is because I was stabbed and left for dead.
Wow.
Sorry, I have no words for this.
It was hard, but I'm okay now. My motivation is, and as a speaker, my purpose is to go out there and help women who have gone through this. That is why I volunteer at the Women's Shelter, to help women with what they're going through. I use self-esteem I've written a book on self-esteem. So I focus on helping women go through it because I've been there, done that, so to speak. It's not easy. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it took me almost 3 years to get through it. I did not seek help. I actually did it on my own. So I'd recommend anybody going through it, you have to ask for help. It's very, very important. And what's ironic is I was an international model walking the runway. And when I was stabbed, I had to learn how to walk again. It wasn't fun. I had to relearn how to walk because I was stabbed on my left knee. So it was have a big scar. But like I say, your wounds are not your reality.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Harriet, thank you for being so vulnerable in sharing your story. And as I listened to you, it's like you took me on this journey inside. I could feel what you were saying, even though I couldn't relate personally. It really highlight my biases and really shed a light on and left me asking, how could we be of support to someone who is in a domestic violence situation? How do we provide support that will really help them, to equip them to get to that stage where they feel they could seek help, or to help them to go to transition to a safer environment?
It's really difficult when a woman is in an abusive relationship because when you're being abused, you actually don't know you're being abused. You're in survival mode. You don't even want to be happy because you don't know what that is. So to support a woman who's in an abusive relationship, just talk to them. Tell them there's many different resources out there that can help you. Being in this relationship is not normal. Love is not about being beat up and being apologized on. That is not love. And in most cases, most women who go through that, not all of them have low self-esteem. And if they didn't have low self-esteem, their relationship turns them into somebody with a low self-esteem. So the best thing you can do to somebody who's abused, talk to them, encourage them, lift them up, and tell them that you're there for them anytime and not to be afraid. There's a lot of help. They have to tell somebody.
Any other questions? Carol, Catherine, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Harriet. It's heartbroken to hear a story like that, to see a beautiful woman going through life like that, because I have heard stories like that before. I've never met this girl. All I heard is this girl was so beautiful, just like you, Harriet. She's beautiful. But at the end, it's just that if you leave me, I'm gonna kill your whole family. And the girl has no other choice. So I've never met this girl, but people told me there was no way she can get out. It has been so in my heart. I always felt like for my sisters, for all my friends, for all the women in the world, why do we have to suffer this? I don't know how to help her. I can understand if somebody threatening me, saying, if you're gonna leave me, I will kill your whole family. I wouldn't be able to leave, Harriet. I know that. And I would never ask the question why you didn't leave, because we never know what the other person is dealing with. Yet, the abuser is typical criminal mind. As a society, what we can do is something that we should really bring this up to the awareness of every level, to every group, and to have our legal system to protect us. And I think, to me, personal level, I wouldn't say like, you just run, you just run. I will give you money, you run. But if at the end, the girl lost her life because of that, I would have been blaming myself. But we need a system, we need a social structure to prevent things like this. Harriet, thank you so much for this speech and for bringing this to awareness of everyone. Thank you so much, Harriet.
Oh, you're welcome, Catherine. Anytime. I'm happy to always share my message. And when I shared my story, I did not give you all the deep details that happened because I don't want to scare anybody. What I want to do is I want to inspire people through my story because my story goes deeper and deeper than that. And those things happen. That's part of me. I don't regret anything that happened to me. In fact, if it didn't happen to me, I probably wouldn't be the person that I am today. But again, I don't want anybody to ever go through what I went through because it was ugly. It was a bad time in my life. And that little girl that you're talking about, I hope that they're gonna find a way to get out of it. Because nothing worse than being threatened by somebody saying, if you leave me, I'm going to kill your family. And in most cases, they are actually telling you the truth. They will actually do it. They're not bluffing. Based on their anger, they will actually do it. And for me, I was afraid for my family because you had the address, you had the phone number, you had my parents' whereabouts, you had everything. I don't think my parents knew that. I never told my family about it. I just kept it inside and said, okay, gotta protect your family, gotta protect them. And the only way to protect them is to suffer. So I suffered until it got to a point where I almost died. Yeah. And I don't want anybody to ever go through that. So thank you for that.
There's a question in the chat and it says, what about if there are kids involved? How does someone leave when children are involved?
That is actually a great question because most people, that's even actually more difficult because most people in an abusive relationship, they don't want to leave because they cannot financially afford to do it. They would rather just be abused and stay in the relationship. But please, you need to leave because there's shelters out there. I volunteer at the women's shelter. There's so many families with children who come there. So there is a safe place you can go. You don't have to stay in that situation. Get out, get your family secure by going to these shelters. They're always, I know I volunteer at the Lorena Women's Shelter, but the sad part is a lot of these women come there for a little while and they go back to their abused relationship because they don't know any better. They feel more safe being abused than not being abused. That's the sad part. But if anybody is being in that situation, you need to get out for the sake of your children because with domestic violence, it's a ripple effect. If your children are seeing that, chances are they'll be the abuser or they'll be the victim. You don't want the history to repeat itself. And I'm not sure for time, Geraldine, if we're...
It's 6:50, it's 6:51 right now.
Okay.
Is there any other questions? No, go ahead.
I'm just curious, like, I'm just trying to think, do you think it's a mental health issue when people are doing that?
A lot of the time it's control and it's low self-esteem. There's been studies showing that a lot of people who abuse as young children. So that's why it's a revolving cycle because that's all you see, that's all you know. My next relationship, I'm going to do what my father was doing to my mother or vice versa. If you've been in, your parents were abused, your mom was being abused, you're going to be abused when you get in a relationship because that's what you're drawn to. So it can be a little bit of mental health. It can also be a control thing, but at the end of the day, it's not healthy for sure.
Thank you, Harriet.
Yeah.
Alice, Alice has a question. Go ahead, Alice.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank you, my baby girl, for telling that story. And that brings back those memories, those sad memories during that time when you were kidnapped and whatever went on. It was really, really very scary time for our family. We were still new in Canada here. And we didn't know about the legal system. So really, we did not do much, but that made me to become paranoid in the first place. I was paranoid about the doors. I always made sure those doors are locked, and up to date, actually, I'm still paranoid. If anybody leaves my door unlocked, they are in trouble. But anyways, I thank God that God saved you and God gave you back to us and you survived. And I'm glad, yeah, you lived to tell and help other women who are in the same situation. And yeah, I just want to thank you so much. But I'm kind of shaky, and because I'm thinking of it like it is fresh, like it just happened yesterday, you know. It scared me a lot. I couldn't imagine, but I'm glad God gave you back to us and you pulled through.
Well, thank you for that, Mom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we still have about 6 more minutes. If anyone want to add a comment or do anything, please feel free to just raise your hand or unmute and say what you have to contribute.
I have one question.
Loynette, yes, go ahead, Loynette.
My question is to Harriet. What kind of resources are available for children who have been in this situation?
Great question.
Oh, yes. Actually, I know that Lorena Women's Shelter has a lot of resources there. I can send you some stuff offline, but I do know I have contact numbers that I can send to you after the session that you can help. There's so many resources for children, actually. The Canadian, I know Alberta Canadian Mental Health also has stuff because they feel if you've gone through this, it's going to affect your mental health. So there's so many resources out there. So I'll send you something offline. After
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Okay, Carol, go ahead. Carol has a question, her hands up.
Hi, thank you so much, Harriet, for sharing that story. I know usually by the time one chooses to be so vulnerable and share, it means you've really journeyed along in your own healing process and your healing journey. So I just want to acknowledge that and just honor that, and thank you for that. My question to you is, just can you maybe comment on, a lot of times we have people within the church, right? If they're involved in the church and you're experiencing domestic violence. So from a faith perspective, I don't know if you can comment on that. A lot of times people don't know how to support. All they know how to say is, let's just pray, right? I'm praying for you. So I'm curious about what is your response to that if it's coming within a faith community.
I think even whether it's a faith or not, I think at the end of the day, somebody has to think about themselves and who they are. Because I know if you have the higher power wants you to be happy. They want you to take care of yourself. And in any religion, being abused, being hurt, it's not okay. So no matter what the faith, praying is good for sure, but prayer also has to have action. Praying is good. You have to have action. If you're being abused, you're being in a situation where you're being hurt, you need to get out. That's not okay. That's not healthy. And even the higher power would want you to be happy and not stay in an abusive relationship. So the biggest thing after you've been abused is forgiveness. And it doesn't mean you're saying it's okay that happened to you. Forgiving is to help you start healing. So whatever's going on, pray, but you need to act at the same time. Get out of that situation and continue to pray, though. That's important. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Carol, for all your questions. Could I ask one last question to Harriet, or if anyone else have another question? So once a victim leaves and they're seeking external help through whatever is available through the community, As a friend or someone who knows this person, how can you as a friend be of support once they leave? What are some steps and things that you could do to help them through that healing and transition process?
I think the biggest thing is everybody is different. When you're healing, ask them, what can I do for you? Ask the question. Always ask, because what I want is different from the other person. So you just need to say, I'm here for you. Please know that I'm here for you. What can I do to help you? Don't assume that they want you around, because sometimes you have too much help. Just keep in contact, see how they're doing, but don't overdo it, because sometimes they want their own space during the healing process. Because first of all, they're embarrassed, maybe they're not happy. There's so many mixed emotions they're going through. So you really don't want to be in their face when they don't want to. Just ask, what can I do to help you?
Okay, thank you. So just a comment that Carol put in the chat, she says, forgiveness is powerful. So as Harriet was speaking about being able to forgive, and
Mhm.
and I think that probably includes forgiving yourself too, because Harriet, I could probably imagine that when you decided to leave, there's probably a lot of self-blame and guilt yourself also. So not just forgiveness for the person, but also for yourself. Is that as equally important, Harriet?
Oh, yes, because forgiveness doesn't mean that you're saying it's okay what happened to you. Forgiveness is about healing. And in my, not probably not today, but I have steps on how to learn to forgive, because it's so hard to forgive something that's happened to you. If somebody kills your child, how can you forgive? If somebody has hurt you the way you've been abused, how do you forgive? So I have 4 steps on how to forgive, and I share that with a lot of the domestic women who have been through it, and it really works, because it's
Okay.
easy to say, it's easy to forgive us, somebody cuts you off when you're driving. But if somebody has hurt you the way a domestic violence victim has been hurt, it's really hard to forgive. So there's 4 steps that I go through to help people learn how to forgive. And Carol is right. Forgiveness is power. You got to forgive to keep on healing. Because as they say, it's a cliche, but they say if you don't forgive, it's like you drinking poison and hoping the other person will die from it. And I know it's a cliche, I don't know who said it, but it's so true. Like when you think about, I'm going to drink this poison. Meanwhile, the abuser is gone. Unfortunately, my abuser only got, and this is quite shocking, he only got about a month in jail for what he did. So that also puts salt in the wound at the same time, because that's why a lot of people who are being abused don't want to report it, because most of the time the abusers don't get a lot of time in jail, and they come back and they do it again. So it's an ongoing cycle. Yeah. But I'm happy. I feel good. I'm always happy to help anybody who's been through it. And what happened to me has made me much stronger. So if anybody's feeling sorry for me, don't. I'm good. Doing okay. I'm here to really help anybody who needs the support. That's my purpose now.
So it is 7:01, but we don't want to cut anyone off. So I'm giving the opportunity. If anyone else has anything else to say, please. Evelyn, again, someone just seconding the strength of forgiveness and how it's powerful to help you move on and to get your power back. Thank you for your comment, Evelyn.
Awesome.
So I don't see any other hands, any other comments. So want to once again thank everyone for being a part of this conversation. My heart, I'm leaving feeling equipped to have the right spirit and the right heart and the right questions to ask. So thank you for providing us practical questions to ask Harriet. And thank you everyone for taking the time to be a part of this engaging heart-to-heart conversation with us. And it was a pleasure meeting and seeing everyone.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just gonna